تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أسأل الله العظيم الجليل أن يجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما ولا يجعل من بيننا شقيا ولا محروما. أسأل الله أن يبارك فيكم وفي جمعكم وفي علمكم ويثبت أقدامكم ويصلح أعمالكم ويرفع درجاتكم. اللهم آمين. Tonight, inshallah, I wanted to start a silsila, a series on the Salaf, the Sa3eed, our pious predecessors, the men who paved the way for us today. And these men from the Tabi'een, the Tabi'een, these are no ordinary men, because they sacrificed their entire lives for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for this deen. And they were very adamant and very persistent on obtaining the correct knowledge and the correct manhaj. فَلَازَمُوا, they held firm and steadfast to the correct aqidah. And this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was quoted to have said that the greatest from my ummah are those, the Sahaba, Khulafa al-Rashideen, and then those after them, and those after them, the Tabi'een, the Tabi'een, the Tabi'een. These are the greatest people to ever uphold this deen. So when you, as a student of knowledge, as a Muslim in this modern day world, are looking to take your deen, to learn your deen, you need to see, is this person, this alim, this da'iyah, does he follow the same manhaj as the Sahaba radwanullahi alayhim, as the Tabi'een, as the Tabi'een? Because those were mentioned by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam as the greatest, the best from the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is very important. And many of us, we've heard stories of the great scholars of the past, the great imams, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Malik, Shafi'i. But there are scholars and notable figures in our history that are very obscure, that you haven't heard about. And tonight, inshallah, I want to shed some light on one of those scholars who was a tabi'i. He was a tabi'i. What does a tabi'i mean? What is a tabi'i?
Follower of Sahaba.
Ahsan. First generation. So he never saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he witnessed the Sahaba radwanullahi alayhim. The generation of the Tabi'ins are those who did not accompany Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but accompanied the Sahaba. So these men had a direct link to the Wahi, which is the Sahaba radwanullahi alayhim. And if you look into their seerah, as I said, many of them are obscure. The man that we are going to discuss tonight, inshallah, was not only a scholar, was not only a muhaddith, was not only a qari, a hafiz, was not only a person of deep knowledge, but he was a person of great etiquette. He was a person of great resilience. Mutawakkil ala Allah. He had firm belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was abid, zahid. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He decrees by His hikmah, by His wisdom, who is a notable slave. And look how many years after, and we are sitting here and we are mentioning this great scholar. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him and give him the highest of Jannah. Allahumma ameen. اسمه الإمام الحافظ المقرئ المفسر الشهيد إن شاء الله أبو محمد أبو عبد الله الأسدي جبير سعيد بن جبير الأسدي الوالبي الكوفي. سعيد ibn Jubayr. Sa3eed ibn Jubayr. How many of you, show of hands, know who he is? And this is why I chose him. If I told you Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayh, everybody's heard. Rahmatullahi alayhi rahmatan wasi'a, Shaykh al-Islam. If I told you Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, everybody's heard. Sa3eed ibn Jubayr. You will never forget this name after tonight, by the way. Sa3eed ibn Jubayr. Listen to this Seerat al-Atira, this amazing biography. This man, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala determined that he will be mentioned until Yawm al-Qiyamah because of his a'mal al-salihah and his manhaj and his etiquette and his resilience for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His companions cited during his era, and his era was during Abdullah ibn Malik ibn Marwan. And he was cited to be A'lam al-Tabi'in. A'lam al-Tabi'in, the most knowledgeable of all the Tabi'in. More knowledgeable than Tawus ibn Kaysan, who was another very notable scholar. More knowledgeable than Mujahid, who was noted for his knowledge in tafsir. More knowledgeable than Ata. The most knowledgeable of the Tabi'een. His companions cited, during his time, the most knowledgeable man of the Tabi'een was Sa3eed ibn Jubayr. His ilm, he had everything. Tafsir, hadith, قضاء في الحلال والحرام في الطلاق مناسك الحج, every aspect, Sa3eed ibn Jubayr. Complete. And this is why he had such a deep resounding effect on this deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he was born during the Khilafah of Ali radiallahu anhu arda. And he was born to a simple family, very modest, humble family. His lineage was not a noble lineage. He was not of the nobles. Rather, his lineage, they were slaves, workers. And he was a non-Arab, kind of Habashi. He was a black man. And subhanallah, this goes to show you that there is no race, no lineage in Islam. We don't believe in this because what takes precedent? Taqwa, your knowledge, your practice of this deen. This is what elevates the men and women. In our societies, in Islamic societies today, we have a festering problem. It's a disease that plagues the hearts and the minds. And I've seen it, where you have people of noble lineage looking down on other people. And this is karitha uzma. This is fasad. This is what destroys the deen. When you look down upon someone else because of their lineage or because of their race or because of their color or because of their status. La. This has no place and time in Islam. And this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said about Bilal, Sayyiduna. Umar radiallahu anhu, astaghfirullah, he said, Bilal Sayyiduna. He is our Sayyid, meaning he is our mister, our nobleman, Bilal ibn Rabah. He is of the highest mention of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. The Sahaba, they did not have this whole thing about race and status. This Islam destroyed all that. But nowadays we have, I'm from family such and such. I come from a noble family from eons ago, decades ago. What does that do for you? What does that do for you if your grandfather was the sultan of this or the king of that, or even if your own father? What does that do for you? It does nothing for you. What have you done for Islam? That's what I ask. That's the question. What have you done for Islam? And a lot of us, we have this sick notion that we're going to get sort of a free pass with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because, my father or my grandfather, or we're direct relatives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One man told me this. We're giving him nasiha, ya akhi taqillah, Salat wajiba, you have to pray your salah. He says, you know, I'm a descendant of Rasulullah. I said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, but what does that do for you? What does that do for you if you don't pray? What is that? Nothing. He, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, he was not from a noble lineage. However, he was noted for his knowledge and for his etiquette and his practice of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at a young age, he began to learn the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he was of the Zahideen and Abideen. He would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very notably, consistently. He would pray Salat al-Tahajjud. And at a young age, his mother realized that he had an accepted dua. كان مجاب الدعوة وقليل ما هم. If I asked you right now, do you know anyone who is mujab al-da'wah? Do you know what mujab al-da'wah means? If this man or this woman makes dua, it's guaranteed. We mentioned a Sahabi who was mujab al-da'wah in one of our past halaqas. What was his name? Anybody can remember?
Yeah.
Sahmul Islam.
He's one of the 10 Ashar al-Bashir.
Ahsant, okay.
He's
Abil Waqqas, Sa3eed.
Sa3eed.
Sa3eed ibn Waqqas. He was mujab al-da'wah. Sa3eed ibn Jubayr, when he was a young boy, he would get up for Salat Qiyam al-Layl. And every night, just before Fajr, the rooster would call out. And you know that there's a hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentioned that the roosters, they make their call when they see the malaika. So he would hear the deek and he would get up for the night prayer just before Fajr. And one night, the rooster didn't make a sound. So he didn't wake up. And he was so choked. He said, what happened? How come that rooster didn't call? قَطَعَ اللَّهُ صَوْتَهُ. He says, may Allah Ta'ala make him silent. And it was noted, his mom reported, she said that rooster never made a single call after that. Because he made dua against it. فَقَالَتْ لَهُ يَا ibni, oh my son, never make dua against anyone or anything. Because she knew that he was mujab al-da'wah. Very sincere and very obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted his dua. And you will see later on in his life, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the ultimate prize. And he received it by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he was young, he would pray Salat al-Tahajjud. And his companions and others noted that he would stand very long in Salah. Very long in Salah. وَكَانَ خَاشِعًا. He would cry to the point where he went almost blind. And he would stand fixed in Salah. And he despised those who pray and they move around too much. And I don't know if you noticed this, but the majority of us, we're slipping, we're lacking in this aspect. I came to the masjid the other day, and there's two young brothers, they were practically dancing in Salah. Scratch here, scratch there, this adjustment of the watch. Yeah. Where's the khushu'? Where's the khushu'? In the Maliki madhab, I believe it's 12 movements and you're out of the Salah. Yani, if you don't have khushu' in your qalb, if you're not fixed and concentrated in here, then your jawarih will not be still, will not be tranquil. And this is one of the things that we have to do. We have to take the time to prepare for salah, not just rush towards it and let it creep up on us. A lot of the brothers, they ask, how can I obtain khushu' in salah? The best way is to have ista'id. You have to prepare for your salah. Don't let it just creep up on you, and then before you know it, you have to make it up before the time goes out, because then you're rushing. Sa3eed ibn Jubayr, he would stand in salah the whole night, fixed, bil khushu' wa bil qunut. And this was noted by him, because he understood who he is standing in front of. He is standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that we need to take in consideration. When you come to stand before Al-Malik al-Dayyan, this is no easy task. You have to stand with khushu'. A man came into the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he offered the 2 sunnah rak'ah, and he came to Rasulullah. And he said, Salaamu alaykum wa alaykum salam. So what did Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam tell him to do? He said, go back and pray. You didn't pray. So the man said, okay. He went back, he prayed. Came back, same thing. He says, go back and pray. And when he came back, he said, go back and pray. So the man gave up. He said, Allimni ya Rasulullah, this is what I know. I don't know any better. Help me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And this is a point that we need to stress. If you don't know how to pray, there's no shame. There is a class being offered here at this masjid, Sifat Salat al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Everyone needs to read this book. Every Muslim, male, female. This is a simple book that Shaykh al-Albani rahmatullah alayhi compiled. Exactly, authentic, from point A to point Z, how to pray. It's as if though you're seeing Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam pray when you read this book. How he used to stand and how his fingers would be apart, not together. Every single aspect of the salah. How he would hold his hand, his right over his left. How he would make every step. You need to read this book. The Prophet's prayer described, okay, by Shaykh al-Albani. So we need to take a lesson in that. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told that man what? He says, "Hatta tatma'in," until you are calm, you're tranquil. So when you're standing in salah, hatta tatma'in. When you're in ruku', hatta tatma'in. When you're in qiyam, sujood, every position, hatta tatma'in, until you are calm, content, and safe. So if you don't take the time to be concentrated, to be tranquil, there's no salah in that. What kind of salah is that? You know, a lot of us, we just think, okay, just get it out of the way and keep moving. That's not how you do it. Sa3eed ibn Jubayr, he used to say a famous saying. Whenever he talked to his companions or those around him, he would mention death. Every opportunity, he would mention death. It was like something that he was noted for. He would mention death at any given opportunity. And some of his companions, they said to him, why you keep mentioning death? You know, like, what's going on with you? And he said, I fear that if I don't mention death with my tongue, that my heart would die. That my heart would die. أخشى لو لا أذكر الموت بلساني يفسد قلبي. My heart would spoil. And these are men, again, that understood the meaning of this dunya. This dunya is nothing. It's mata' al-ghurur. It is a temporary enjoyment of delusion. So he knew what this dunya was worth. And he sold it. He said, I don't want it, I want the next life. So he used this life to get the next life. And that's what we need to do, because what we're doing right now, we flipped the script. We flipped it. We're like, you know what? We want this world. We don't think about the akhirah, because as soon as you mention death, people start creeping out. And they're like, yo, I don't want to hear this. This is getting too real. You know? But that's what it is. The reality is death. If anyone asks you, give me a guarantee in life, you know what you tell them? The only guarantee in life is death. That's the truth. You're gonna die. La mahala. That is the one appointment you're not gonna be early for or late. You're gonna be on time, exact. You're not gonna miss it, and it won't miss you. So he would constantly mention death, and he said, I feared that if I don't mention death, my heart would die. And this is something we need to do. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he guided us towards that. Now, when he was obtaining knowledge, he was the shadow of Abdullah ibn Abbas. When I say shadow, wherever Abdullah ibn Abbas was, Sa3eed ibn Jubayr was with him, asking him, learning from him, mimicking him, following him. This man was his shadow. Do you know who Abdullah ibn Abbas was? ترجمان القرآن حبر هذه الأمة. He was the translator of the Quran. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he made dua for this Sahabi to be the most knowledgeable of the Sahaba when it comes to Kitabullah. and he was the translator, the official translator of the Quran. We would have no translation, no understanding or comprehension of the Quran if it wasn't for Abdullah ibn Abbas. And who cited from him? Sa3eed ibn Jubayr. Right hand man, the shadow of Abdullah ibn Abbas. His shadow. And he would go and attend his classes, and he would sit and he would write on his scroll. And when his scroll was done, he would flip it and he would write on the other side. And when that was done, he would write on his garments, on his palms, wherever he could write. Remember, he was a poor, very simple man, but he wanted knowledge. So he followed Abdullah ibn Abbas, and he wrote everything, cited everything. He asked him everything he could to obtain this knowledge. And he took a hadith from him. He cited a hadith from Anas ibn Malik, from Aisha radiallahu anha, from a lot of notable Sahaba, from Abi Musa al-Ash'ari, Abi Hurairah. Sa3eed ibn Jubayr is in the chain of narration. He is the tabi'i that has given us that link. This man was a very, very notable man for this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him. And when the people of Kufa, the people of Iraq, where Sa3eed ibn Jubayr resided, they would come to Abdullah ibn Abbas and they would ask him questions. They would be like, oh, we have an issue and we need a fatwa. They would come all the way to Abdullah ibn Abbas. And he would tell them, why are you guys here? You're from Kufa. You guys have Sa3eed ibn Jubayr there. Ask him. This is how much knowledge this man had, that a Sahabi such as Abdullah ibn Abbas would cite, and he would tell his people to ask him instead of to ask him directly, to ask Sa3eed ibn Jubayr. This is a person of knowledge, of great knowledge. Rahmatullah alayhi rahmatan wasi'ah. And as I mentioned, he took a hadith from the Sahaba directly. And one hadith in particular, he took from Abdullah ibn Abbas. It was noted that when he was young, a young boy, he got bit by a scorpion. He got stung by a scorpion. And his mom, she told him, she said, you have to go and do ruqyah. This could be dangerous. You're going to get very sick. So he said, no, I don't do ruqyah. And she said, no, I ask you by Allah, you have to go to the raqi and do ruqyah. So because his mom asked him and she asked him by Allah, he went. He went to this raqi. But he said, and he cites the story, he says, I gave him the opposite hand. Meaning he got bit on the right hand, he gave him the left hand. Just so he doesn't disobey his mother. But he refused the ruqyah on every occasion. One occasion, his companions, they mentioned that he had splitting migraines. Okay? And they said, why don't we do ruqyah? He says, no. La astarqi. I don't ask for ruqyah. I don't want anybody's ruqyah. And the ulama, they said, why was he so adamantly against this? La yastarqi. There's a hikmah behind it, because if you look at the hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas, where he mentions that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned on Yawm al-Qiyamah, the prophets would all come with their people, with their followers, and some of the prophets would come with 50 people. Some of the prophets would come with one person following them. Some of them with nobody. And then he saw a massive, huge crowd. And he asked Jibreel, he says, are those my ummah? And he said, no, look over there. And there was another, even bigger group. And he says, this is your ummah. And from that ummah, there are 70,000. 70,000 from the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that will enter Jannah. Get this, Ibrahim. 70,000 people will enter Jannah without any hisab, no account, any iqab, no punishment. They won't even have to stand for judgment. They are VIPs of Jannah. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the khalaiq, all the creations to rise, fi ard al-mahshar, they will rise and they're going straight to Jannah. They don't stand 50,000 years. They don't cross the Seerat. They don't see ahwal yawm al-qiyamah. They don't see the judgment. They don't see the scrolls. They don't see the Jahannam. They're going straight to Jannah. 70,000 من أمتي يدخلون الجنة بغير حساب وَلَا السَّابِقَ عِدًا. There is no punishment for them, no judgment. They don't need to answer a single question. They're going straight to Jannah. Who are these people? Do you know who they are? هُمُ الَّذِينَ لَا يَسْتَرْقُونَ. They're the ones who never seek ruqya or medical attention. Now this doesn't mean you don't go to the doctor if you're sick, or this means that you try to do ruqya yourself. The ulama said, الَّذِينَ لَا يَسْتَرْقُونَ. So they're not going to go around and ask this sheikh and this Mawlana and this fulan, I want your ruqya. La. The sunnah, the adab, is that you put your right hand on the alam or wherever it hurts and you recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Surah Al-Fatiha. You don't need anybody's ruqya. And these 70,000 people, they know this. And I'll continue. وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَطَّيَّرُونَ. They don't believe in folklore. They don't believe in superstition. The Arabs of old, when they used to leave their house, if they saw a crow, you go like, Yawm Nahs. This is going to be a bad day. It's going to be a black day. It's either a crow or an owl, death. It's death. يَطَّيَّرُونَ. Any bird that they saw, if it was a white dove, blessed day. Quraysh, when they used to go on their journeys, on their way, if they saw an owl, they would return. This is pre-Islam, huh? They would return. Or a crow, or a vulture, because this is a bad omen, huh? But Islam, hadama dhalik, destroyed this, because we don't believe in this. These are birds, huh? So, Rasulullah ﷺ, he said, لا يسترقون ولا يطيرون وعلى ربهم ولا يكتوون. And they do not practice kawi. What is kawi? It's still practiced today in Sudan, actually. Kawi is an ancient form of medicinal treatment. If somebody has an ailment, a pain, a disease, they would burn that spot. They would take a hot iron rod and they would burn that spot. And believe it or not, it has proven effects. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam naha an al-kawi. He said, do not do it. Not that it's haram. Nahi karaha. The nahi here is he disliked it. The ulama said you can do it as a last resort. Why? Because it's painful. You're taking a hot iron rod and you're burning the person. These people, these 70,000, they don't do that. They'll take the pain. Just like Sa3eed and Jubayr, he wanted to take the pain. He didn't want nobody's ruqya, no kawi, no tatayyur. And then the last and the concluding fact about these 70,000, وَعَلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. And they fully rely upon Allah. So first of all, they don't seek ruqya from anyone else. Number two, they don't believe in folklore or superstition. Number three, they don't practice kawi, which is the burning, and they fully rely upon Allah. So Sa3eed ibn Jubayr, he is in the chain of narration right after Abdullah ibn Abbas. So the ulama said this is why he refused ruqya, because he wanted to be one of those 70,000. Could you just imagine, just for a moment, Habibi, that Yawm al-Qiyamah, when the Anbiya, the Rusul, the Salihin, they're going to stand for judgment and they will say, Nafsi, Nafsi. They're going to be worried about themselves. And you are amongst the 70,000 that are already in Jannah. La ilaha illallah. Sallallahu yaj'alna minhum. Say Ameen. During this hadith, when Rasulullah ﷺ mentioned this, there was a man by the name of Ukasha ibn Mihsan. I wanted to name my son after this man, because look at this story. When he said this, Ukasha stood up. And there's a group of Sahaba, and he stood up and he says, Ya Rasulullah, ud'u an akuna minhum. Make dua that I am one of the 70,000. فَقَالَ إِنَّكَ مِنْهُمْ. Rasulullah ajabah, and he said, you are of them. Another Sahabi, he saw this and he said, yo, this is my opportunity. He stood up and he says, Ya Rasulullah, ud'u an akuna minhum. Rasulullah ﷺ التفت إليه وقال اجلس قد سبقك بها عكاشة. Sit down. Ukasha beat you to it. Ukasha ibn Mihsan. Do you guys know who this man was? Sahabi Jaleel. During the battle of Uhud, when Rasulullah ﷺ was surrounded by the mushrikeen, he covered Rasulullah ﷺ and he was fixing his bow, and he got arrows in his back. He was the shield of Rasulullah ﷺ. Don't think he got the 70,000 just because he asked. No. This man worked for it. He worked for it. And he is of not just the Mubashirin bil Jannah, guaranteed Jannah, but he will enter Jannah before anyone else, without any punishment, without any question. Do you know what that means? No question. There is no need to weigh his deeds. He's gonna rise and straight, تفضل ادخلوها بسلام. Allahu Akbar. So Sa3eed ibn Jubayr, he really wanted to be of the 70,000. That's why he never sought ruqyah. And another notable aspect about him is that he would do Umrah and Hajj every year. Every year. This is before they had, full flights, Lufthansa or KLM or whatever, these knockoff flights, huh? You guys think it's hard to go right now to Mecca, 14 hours. Imagine 6 months of travel through the desert. So he would go for Umrah, come back, rest a bit, and then start his journey to make it to Hajj. Every year. Hajj and Umrah. Long trip, months we're talking, through the desert, through storms. This man, he wanted to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he would do Umrah and Hajj every single year. And you have to understand that every alim, every scholar, every notable salih, every pious predecessor had trials and tribulations. And Sa3eed ibn Jubayr was not immune from this. His trial and his great ordeal came with what we know as fitnatul qurra. Fitnatul qurra. And I'm going to segment this because I want to go into it next class, inshallah. Next Saturday, we're going to continue Sa3eed ibn Jubayr. And I want you to think about this. Fitnatul qurra was a decisive moment in the history of Islam. And this was the moment Khuruj Abdurrahman ibn al-Ash'ath against al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. Al-Hajjaj was known to be a tyrant. He was the right-hand man of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. And during Abdul Malik ibn Marwan's Khilafah or rule, Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf was the guy that wanted to spread Islam. And he had a right-hand man by the name of Abdurrahman ibn al-Ash'ath, who was a general like you've never seen. A soldier that would follow orders, that had no fear, that would raise the sword for the sake of Allah. He would fight anyone in any place with any army, doesn't matter, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. During this time, Abdurrahman ibn Ash'ath, he was the go-to guy. And his forces reached over 150,000. And they were fighting the non-Muslim Turkish region. And after some conquest, he saw the troops were war-torn, they needed to rest, they needed to heal, so he wanted to give them a chance to rest. When Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, he heard about this, he wrote to him. And he said, "Are you a coward? Keep going, keep fighting. We didn't tell you to stop." And Ibn al-Ash'ath, he took this personally. And he said, we have been fighting for months and all of this conquest for the sake of Allah, and then I get treated like this. So he wanted to turn on Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf. Now, I'm not going to get into who's who or what's what. If you look to the opinions of the ulama, these are Muslim men. And every Muslim, except for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Abul Qasim, يأخذ ويرد منه. You can take and you can neglect from. We are all prone to error, except for Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Never forget this, Never forget this. And you will see the most noble of men slip. This is normal. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us all. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us upright. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us firm. But don't think that this person is so great and so wise that they don't slip. It's normal. It's normal. So, Abdurrahman ibn al-Ash'ad, he wanted to go against Hajjaj ibn Yusuf. He said, you know what? I have all the army. I have all of this. All the people support me. I'm going to go against Hajjaj. And amongst those who followed Abdurrahman ibn al-Ash'ad was Sa3eed ibn Jubayr. And some of the most notable ulama. And they went out against Al-Hajjaj. This was a time of great fitna. Because here you have Muwajaha, you have Ibn al-Ash'ad, he has an army that's supposed to be opposing the kuffar, the disbelievers. And he's gone far. His conquest has gone far. He's almost going to take it out. And then he turns the army against the Muslims. Against Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, who was a zalim, no doubt. He was a persecutor. He was a man. If he didn't like the way you looked, or you didn't say Salaam Alaikum properly, chop your head. That's how he was. This is cited. He's killed hundreds of thousands of people. It's cited in history. So, Abdurrahman ibn Ash'ad, he said, you know what? I had enough of this. I'm not taking orders from this guy. This guy's a zalim. He's a persecutor. He's doing so much harm. He's killing people left, right, and center. We're going to go kill him. So on their way, they wanted more support. So he tried to gather all the support of the ulama. And amongst them, as I mentioned, Sa3eed ibn Jubayr was one of them. And they went to all the ulama trying to gather support. But they didn't get full support. And by the way, it's notable to say that not a single Sahabi, not a single companion of Rasulullah joined in this. They all refused. And Shaykh Hassan al-Basri, when he was approached and they told him about this, you know what he said? He said, listen, Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf undoubtedly is a tyrant. But perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put him in this position to be a punishment for us because of our wrongdoings. And if he is a trial, then may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the patience to overcome this trial. I see that you don't go against him. And this is the manhaj as-sahih. Because if you look at it from the aspects of the pros and the cons, from jalb al-masalih wa daf' al-mafasid, look around you today. I want you to just take a look. What happened in Syria when they came out? What happened? Absolute chaos. What happened in Libya when they came out? Absolute destruction. What happened in Yemen? What happened in Masr? This is stories of old. We need to take lesson. So long as you're allowed to practice your deen, you're patient. And if you're prevented from practicing your deen, ardullahi wasi'ah, you can go somewhere else to practice. You cannot go out against a Muslim leader. This is a zallah. This is a moment in history where the most knowledgeable of people made a mistake, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive them and reward them because هذا اجتهادهم. But what happened next was far greater and far more severe, and it would be written down in history. Because this war, this onslaught, would change the course of Islam. I'm talking 150,000 troops versus another 150, 200,000 Muslim versus Muslim. And Sa3eed ibn Jubayr is in the middle of all that. من أكبر العلماء من أكبر المحدثين المفسرين. He's right there. And next Saturday, inshallah, I'm going to tell you how it ended and how his life ended. And that's where you have to come and join us بإذن سبحانك الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.